Dearest gentle simmer, it has come to this author's attention that a new season descends upon us once more, and already the ton trembles with ambition, simmers with romance, and ripens, most deliciously, toward scandal. Each household shall find itself beneath the unforgiving glare of society's gaze. Yet this author would caution against confidence, for not every family emerges from such scrutiny with reputation intact. Every generation, it seems, is dealt with its own romantic fate, a second chance at a love once abandoned, a feigned engagement that grows sincere, or most scandalous of all, an attachment so unsuitable as to set every drawing-room in whispers. Titles and estates shall pass, as ever they must, to the eldest legitimate son. And yet, as the ton knows only too well, heirs have a most vexing habit of proving disappointing, reluctant or absent altogether. In such regrettable circumstances, this author has observed that distant cousins materialize with truly remarkable haste. No young lady nor gentleman may dream of entering the marriage mart without first mastering those accomplishments befitting their station. For society, dear simmer, may forgive a great many sins, but poor breeding is never among them. Each new generation must furnish the ton with its entertainments. A scandal here, a rivalry there, a forbidden romance to set tongues wagging, while families scramble ever so desperately to preserve both their good name and their precious bloodline. And so, this author finds herself wondering, who shall ascend in glittering triumph, and who shall become society's next cautionary tale? Yours truly, Lady Whistledown.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, or welcome in if you're new. I'm racheysims, and today I'm so excited to unveil my newest challenge, my newest rotational challenge. And this time we are going back in time for some historical gameplay, rotational gameplay in a historical time period. And the time period is the Regency era. The short synopsis of this challenge is that you, the player, are the unseen hand behind 7 families climbing or falling through Regency society. So you are going to play each household in rotation, and you're going to guide generation after generation through things that you've seen in shows like Bridgerton, and Jane Austen novels, and historical romance books. You are going to guide them through the marriage mart, the gossip sheets like Lady Whistledown, and the ever-present threat of ruin. So every household is given a historical romance trope, and each generation that romance trope will change. So you're going to get some variety in your gameplay by switching out these romance tropes. So the goal is basically to kind of weave these families to kind of together, entangle them, have some scandal, have a lot of drama. So it's gonna feel like Bridgerton. It's gonna feel like a classic historical romance trilogy of books. It's gonna feel like that. So that's basically the synopsis of the challenge. So if this sounds intriguing to you, definitely keep watching. All right, so here in the beginning, this is basically just the intro that we just watched. It's Lady Whistledown, kind of giving you an overview of the challenge as Lady Whistledown would. So that's what that is. And then the next section is the challenge overview. So we're gonna do a rotation, and we're gonna do 2 in-game sim days. And then just make sure in your settings that you have only active aging on for your active household. For generations, like I just said, each household is going to be assigned a romance trope. And down below, I'm going to go over the households and their assigned romance tropes. But then after that, in future generations, it's going to be up to you to pick a classic historical romance trope. So some of those might be a second chance romance, a fake engagement, a brooding hero, a governess romance, a reformed spinster, Highland Bride. Those are a few, and I'll have some more down below as well. Um, so each heir must successfully fulfill that romance trope in each generation. Okay, so heir selection. So I am gonna stick to the classic Regency time period with the eldest male legitimate child is the heir. Just because the reason I'm keeping this is I want it to be that classic like stakes where what if you have like five girls in a row and you don't have a male heir? Like those are problems. Or what if your male heir passes away and you don't have another male heir? Like I want those stakes, those high stakes that you have in the Regency period. I want that played out in this challenge, so that's why I kept that in. If you don't want to do that, you can definitely change it in your gameplay. I always say in challenges, make it your own. So if you want to change or tweak anything I'm going over, feel free to do so. So let's say you do have a case where you don't have a male heir, your male heir passes away, or your male heir refuses. Then you would um, create a new sim and cast that is a distant cousin, and they would move into the house and claim it. So they could take care of everybody in the household, or they could kick them to the curb. You never know what's going to happen. That's up to you to decide what you want to do. But that is how you handle that. So Sims can't marry across different households. I think for me, it would be fun if like everybody's kind of entwined together, even if it's like the poorest family with the wealthiest family, they might be entwined in some way. Just try to stick to the Regency era rules. So dynasty ideals. So I am kind of not using the dynasty system that came with the royalty and legacy pack. You do not need to own this pack to play this challenge. It's just kind of like an added bonus, but you don't have to do that. You could just track it manually. I have a tracker, you know me, if you've played any of my other challenge. I love a tracker. So you don't need the in-game dynasty system to play this. But there are certain ideals that the household has to keep up. Dynasty skills. So there's skills as well that you need to work on in your household. And then every heir should reach at least level 5 in at least two of these skills before marrying. So, like in Bridgerton, your sim is going to be formally presented to the queen before formally entering the marriage mart. Right now, I'm gonna have the marriage mart only take place during the spring season. If if that is way too short of a time frame, especially for this first generation, it's okay to do it in the spring and summer. We just don't want the marriage mart going on for way too long. We want to have it only during that time period. So if somebody doesn't find someone in that first season, they have to wait to the next season, make it a little more realistic. Okay, so noble and landed gentry ladies must have the following skills before they can be formally presented to the queen. So they have to have a level 3 logic skill, a level 3 etiquette skill, and that's a part of a mod. And I'm going to go over mods later. That's a part of the Regency Romance mod. That skill. They have to have a 3 in painting, a 3 in piano, and a 3 in social dancing. Social dancing is also part of that Regency Romance mod. So if you don't play with mods, you can't or you don't play with them, then what you would do is you could just do dancing for social dancing instead of that. And then etiquette, maybe you could just do charisma. It's up to you. Okay, and then for noble and landed gentry gentlemen, they must have a level 3 in logic, 3 in charisma, 3 in fitness, and 3 in social dancing. And like I just said, if you don't have the receive romance mod, then you can just use dancing. Okay, so for each generation, you have to adopt a new historical romance trope. And then you have to maintain or challenge the family dynasty ideals. Okay. So you're gonna have to introduce at least one scandal, rivalry, or forbidden relationship for each of those households, each generation. You'll have to attempt to improve or maintain the family social standing. You have to produce at least one heir unless the storyline prevents it. So that's up to you. If you don't want to have an heir, then for your storyline, then you can you have to perform all required death rolls, class reviews, and Whistledown tallies. I'm going to go over that more in depth. And then you have to track your progress on a spreadsheet. So I do have a Google Sheets link that I will add in here. Um, And then there's no Notion tracker yet, guys. So if somebody wants to do a Notion tracker, you can. But otherwise, I will maybe do it eventually in a few months' time or something. But Notion tracker will take me too long to do. So we'll just do it. The spreadsheet is easier. So I do have a link here that has a list of some romance trope ideas for you, and I also have a few down here. Fake courtship, a scandalous affair, a wallflower romance, a grumpy and sunshine. So that's like when somebody's extremely grumpy and somebody's super cheerful. A runaway bride, a accidental compromise, a governess romance, a revenge courtship, a secret heir, a widower romance, Beauty and the Beast, a rakish nobleman, and hidden fortune. So those are some ideas, and here is a link as well. If you click on that, it'll take you to some more ideas as well. I may add more in here as well. At any point in time, I may add some more here as well. And then if you guys have any suggestions of tropes that I can add, feel free to comment below and let me know. All right. So for suggested packs, so like I said, you do not have to have the Royalty and Legacy pack to play this challenge. You can play this with just base game. Um, but for me, I have all the packs, so I'm gonna play with it. There is a dynasty system in Royalty and Legacy that we use like a little bit in this challenge, but you can totally play it without it. So the packs I recommend are Royalty and Legacy, Business and Hobbies, and Get Together. Okay, so for suggested mods, reach the romance mod because there's some custom traits in there. There's a lot of stuff in there that's super helpful for playing in this time period. There's the Fairwick mod, which is another great reach the era mod that I don't see people talking about a lot, but it's really great. And I will update this as well with links to these mods. Um, Wonderful Whims or Wicked Whims. So I like it just basically for the attraction system. There also is an attraction system with what is it, the Love Struck pack? Yeah, so maybe I'll add that in here as a another pack. Meaningful stories. I like meaningful stories mod, just giving some rich more emotions during your gameplay. Um, y'all know I love the basemental mod. There's the alcohol only one you can choose or the other full one. But it's great. And just try to pick like stuff that would maybe around during that time period, like wine and like hard liquors like port, sherry, and brandy. Um, so custom content for the Reach Sea. There's so much custom content now for the Reach Sea. And then also the latest event, if you played that came with a couple outfits. The Bridgerton kits that came out, those came with some stuff too for those that don't play with TC. You could totally do that with those kits as well. So MC Command Center. I love this. This was super helpful when I set up my save by giving everybody skills and stuff like that. And then S&B Bank. So I'm going to use this to manage everybody's dowries. All right. So the next section is the class system. All right. We have our households. I'm going to go into more detail with them. But for our classes, we have nobility class, landed gentry, merchant, and poor. So there's basically two of each class, except for the poor family, and I'll explain why we only have one poor family in here. But for nobility, those are people with titles. They usually have the largest and most expensive homes. They have the finest furnitures. They have a full staff. They don't do things like cook, do handiness, fish or garden. If they fish or garden, it's just like a polite hobby. And then they can only marry within their nobility class or landed gentry. Merchants would be if they're really struggling, then they can marry an extremely wealthy merchant that it doesn't have that title yet, but basically in funds has enough to be a landed gentry, then that's who they would marry. So landed gentry, they have country manners, they have a smaller staff, they can do things like garden, paint, write, ride, and they can marry into any class. But if you're gonna marry like landed gentry with poor, you gotta make it a great story. You gotta make it a really compelling story if you're gonna do something like that. Okay, so merchant class, so they live in townhouses or small shops above businesses. So in my rules, they must run a Sims 4 small business with that small business pack. You can also do like a retail shop um with the get to work pack as well. You can do that as well. I prefer the small businesses because they could live there, which is what they did back then. So I suggest using that pack. And then if they do marry above their class, let's say they marry a nobility, you got to make it like a great story. All right. And then the last one is poor. So these are tenant farmers on borrowed land. So another pack that you might want to use is the for rent pack for that. And then you can have like a nobility or landed gentry own that and rent it out to them. So they're gonna live in like a really small cottage. They cannot have any kind of staff whatsoever. Um, they must work the land by gardening, caring for animals, fishing, mending. Another thing that I think would be cool is if they could do odd jobs. I think that's something you could definitely have them do as well. And that came with the cottage living pack, I believe. So that's something that they can do as well. Okay. So I've calculated this based on houses from the gallery. So you may want to adjust any of these ranges for your own gameplay. Like if you are a builder and build your own houses and your houses may not be worth as much, then go ahead and change that. All right, so starting off with your poor Sims, so they're under $100,000, and to rise in class, they would have to be over 100,000 for 2 generations. And then they can't fall because they're already at the bottom of the class. All right, the next class is the merchant class, and they could be between 100,000 and 499,999. So basically 100,000 to under 500,000 for them. So in order to rise, they have to have over 500,000 or more over 2 generations, and they have to have an estate with 100 acres. And the estates are part of the Regency Romance mod as well. To fall, they have to be below 100,000 for 2 generations. Landed gentry class, so they are between 500,000 and then under a million. So in order to rise, they have to have a million or more for 2 generations, and they have to have an estate with 500 acres. There is a special note on rising to nobility that we'll go over. But to fall, they need to be below 500,000 for 2 generations. All right, and then your top class is nobility, and so they have to stay over a million or more. Titles cannot be purchased, so I guess for a nobility to rise, it would be for them to become like king or queen. So, which that would be by marriage basically only. So and then to fall, it would be below 1 million for 2 generations, or they lose their title. If the king or queen takes their title away from them, they get fired from nobility career, something like that. There is, I believe there's the layoff system in growing together. So maybe they get accidentally laid off, which I'm not sure if I've never had a layoff in my gameplay. I don't know if you guys have. So maybe that could be like something that happens. Or even in your gameplay story, they do something super scandalous. They lose their title. um, that would be the threshold to fall. So the next section I'm going to talk about rising and falling, basically in class. So like on the chart I just went over, they have to maintain it for 2 generations. The first generation it could be a fluke, right? They could just be get a lot of money the next that generation, and then the second generation they could lose it all on gambling or something, right? So you have to establish that and prove it's not a fluke. That's why we have the 2 generation rule. And then they have to complete these at least one of these events. They have to host a ball. If a merchant family hosts a ball, then you need a landed gentry family to attend it. They have to be invited. They could be invited to a party at the household of the target class that they're trying to go to. They can marry upward if they marry somebody in a higher class, and then they could receive a they could receive a patron, basically like a sponsorship between the other class. They could do that as well. Okay, so then once they officially rise in class, when we do generational like handoffs, that's when it would happen. And then the heir has to abide by that lifestyle restriction that we discussed earlier. Okay, and so like I said earlier, titles can't be purchased. Another way you could do it is the marriage into a titled family. And then like I said, the royals grant you a title. So you can do this when we go over the roles. I kind of explain that more in depth, but you can get it that way if you donate a ton of money. You could gain a title that way. I wouldn't just have your kings and queens just grant anybody a title. You want to make it really special. So these are some of the ideas I have. If you want to add any more, you can. And if you guys have suggestions of ideas that you have, comment that below. And then falling in class. So you can definitely fall in class. So if your household net worth drops for at 2 generations, and at your second generational handoff, that's when that family would fall. That third generation would be the would have that lower class. If you have 3 or more unresolved scandals, and we'll go over this Whistledown score in a bit, it will cause immediate social fall 1 tier, regardless of how much money you have, because the ton has standards. And then bankruptcy. So if your household funds reaches $0, that would cause immediate fall as well. If a nobility household loses their title, so that could be through net worth, treason, if they try to like overtake the king or queen, if the heir refuses the role for like 3 generations, or a crazy extreme scandal happens, then they would fall immediately to merchant, because the title was basically their most valuable asset that they had. And a poor household can't fall any further, but they can become so destitute that the household is dissolved. So they may become so destitute that they have to become a servant, or something else. And then you could create a new founding family. All right, and then for marrying classes, marrying in between classes, and then marrying in mixed marriages, I have some kind of stipulations here. It doesn't like necessarily change automatically. The marrying in sim takes on the host household's class. So if a duke's daughter marries a baker, they would become the baker's wife, and they would be in that class because they're joining that household. So they're joining the male households. So that's how it would happen. Hopefully that example makes sense. Because that's what happened back then. It was kind of by males. So the male was head of household. So the class that they're marrying into, That's the class that they would take. So the marrying spouse may bring a dowry. So that can up them in class too, right? If they bring a huge dowry, that can help them move in class, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen right away. So for the nobility class, the suggested dowry I have is 100,000 to 200,000. And these are just suggestions. Feel free to change them, or you don't have to do it at all. Landed gentry is 50,000 to 90,000. Merchant is 10 to 40,000, and then poor is 1,000 to 5,000. And then a huge dowry of over 200,000 immediately counts as one of the two required generations of sustained wealth. So you get rise quicker if you have like bring in a huge dowry. Okay, so at the end of each generation, when you're handing it off to the new heir, you are gonna perform the following things. You're gonna calculate the household net worth, which I have a handy spreadsheet that does it for you. You are gonna compare against the household's class thresholds. You're gonna check the scandal tally to make sure there's no like crazy scandals that are unresolved. You're gonna apply any rise or fall points, and we'll go over the system later. And then you're gonna update the household's class in your tracker. And then the new heir will begin under the new rules. Everybody has to pay taxes in real life, so I love making my Sims pay taxes, and they had to pay taxes back then as well. So you are gonna pay your taxes once a year. You could pay it with cheats, or you could use the SMB bank mod to send the money to your king or queen that you have in your safe. It's up to you. So for our annual taxes, that is based just on the household's lot value. So for nobility is 3%, and then I have 10%, and that's basically for like their land, their servants, their carriages, um, for like their crests and stuff like that. They made them pay taxes for that. So I have that here. And then for landed gentry, it's 5% of the lot value plus 5,000. And so that would be like for similar things like your land, your estates, servants, stuff like that. For merchants, it's 10% of the lot value plus $1,000, and that's for like duties and your shop license. And then for the poor, it could be a token of $200. The window tax, so this was like a famous tax back then, and it was super hated. So you can add $100 for every window in the household each year, and they have to pay that each year. So if somebody's really broke, they could remove the windows so they don't have to pay the tax. If you do that, that's kind of scandalous. So you have to kind of track that. So that earns 5 Whistledown points. Um, and then -2 for your dynasty points. And then poor families don't have to pay the window tax, so it's just merchants and up. So another, it's not really a tax, but it was a tithe, but they definitely had to tithe back then. So nobility, landed gentry, and merchant households gave. I have that they give 500 to 5,000 each sim year by donating to charity. We have that in game. Or you could donate things to a needier family. Or if you have a patron, you can have that there as well. So poor families don't have to pay, but they'll have to do something like help at the church garden, baking or mending, something like that. Give food to a neighbor. They all kind of pitched in back then, right, to help each other out. So that's what they would do. And then if you refuse the tithe, you can't claim a Great Redemption Act, and I'll go over that later. Unpaid taxes. So if they can't pay their taxes, they enter collections, and then the unpaid sum is a debt against the family. So every time they don't pay, it goes up 10% each year. So they do have like a full year to come up with the taxes, but they're going to have to pay the back tax plus that tax. So it's going to be more difficult. If taxes are unpaid through 2 consecutive sim years, that is an unresolved scandal. So those are points breakdown. I'm gonna go over that in a bit, guys. And the household could fall in class. And then if they have household funds of $0, and they still owe taxes, then they are considered bankrupt and they immediately fall in class. So if they do clear up their taxes within that same generation, that resolves that big scandal. And it's a great redemption act. And then their dynasty points are kind of mostly resolved. And like I said before, when you have that kind of trade off to the future generation, you have to make sure, all your taxes and stuff are paid before the heir takes over. All right, death rolls, y'all. So this is something I've always loved about like the decades challenge. When I played it before and I've seen other people play historical, I love the death rolls. It just makes the game, you may have one intention of going somewhere and then your character dies. So these are the rolls that you need to do. We got to use a d20 die for this. For the poor family, you're going to roll for the mother and the child. So there's basically, these are the percentage chances of them dying. 1, 3, or 5. Poor family dies. Merchants 7 or 9. Landed gentry 7 or 9. Nobility is 1. And then I have modifiers as well. So you can add a number in before rolling for each previous birth past 4. If this is baby number 5 they're pregnant with, you got to add another number in, because the more pregnancies you had, the greater risk of complication was. And then you can add another number in if the mother is an adult sim age. And then for landed gentries, you can remove a number before rolling if this fitness skill is above 3. Let me fix that. All right. Yeah. So for landed gentry, you're going to remove a number if they have a high fitness skill of over 3. Then you can take one of these numbers away, so they have less chance of dying. And nobility, I didn't add any modifiers in because they would have like the best physicians and stuff. Okay, so then you're gonna roll again for the child. So I have a lower risk of the child dying. So on 1, the child does not survive. All right, editing Rachel here. This section was confusing, so I have changed things up. Okay, so your households and every sim in that household is going to roll a fever roll in the summer and the winter. And this is based off of historical things that happened back then. All right. And then another thing is the in-game sicknesses don't count as a fever roll. You don't have to roll for this. You would just treat that as a common cold because we have enough rolls where your sim may perish, so we don't need to add in that in-game mechanic. All right, so children, if they roll a 1, they will die. And then for poor households, you need to add another number in, so they will also die on 2. Young adults and adults, if they are in the poor or merchant class and they roll a 1, they die. If your young adults are landed gentry and nobility, they do not need to roll. And then if they have a fitness level below of 2, which is very low, which you shouldn't have, you need to add another number in before rolling for them. All right. For elders, they will die if they roll a 1 or 2. If you have an elder living in a residential rental or apartment, you need to add another number in, and then they would die as well. Your unwell sim. So down below, I'm gonna discuss this more for some of the other roles, but there's a chance that they could become gravely injured or wounded, and very unwell. And that's where this section comes in. So if they roll a 1 or 3, they would die. If they roll a 4 to 10, they stay unwell and you'd have to roll again. And then if they roll 11 or more, then they fully recover. And then you can also add another number in here if no physician is retained, and your physicians would be retained by landed gentry and nobility because they would have the funds to pay for that, and then you could come up with a fund a dollar amount, a simoleon amount that you would have to pay your physician. Another thing that you can add is you can mark them for consumption if they roll a one instead of just dying. So how that would work is they would need to roll a 20 to fully recover. It's basically like an extra chance that they can recover from your illness, but it's very small odds. They will probably just die. So if they roll a 1 to 19, they're still sick and you have to roll again. And then on that third roll, they either need to get a 20. If they roll any other number, then they die. And this just makes it so you have time to do your wills if you haven't done that. If you need to confess your love for another sim before you die, you could do that. If you need to legitimize an illegitimate child, you could do that. You could confess to all your sins to the clergy. You could do that. You could add some more time for some drama. So that is why I've added that in here. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any comments. But when I go over the other roles, I feel like you'll see this unwell section right here, and then where you can do that. The consumption instead of just having them die right away. All right, the duel. So this was something that happened. Two gentlemen would get in a fight and they would fight over something, compromising someone's sister, something else. They could duel each other. So I have roles for that as well. And this will be rolled by both parties at dawn. So if they roll a 1, then you are killed outright. And each duelist has to roll. If you roll a 1, you're killed outright, and your second carries you home. So sad. If you roll a 2, you are gravely wounded. You roll a fever for each season. So we just went over the fever rolls up there. You recover if you roll 11 or more, and you die on 1 or 3. So it's the same as what we just went over. 3 to 7, you are grazed or your shot misses. Your reputation is preserved, but you have incurred a scandal cost. If you roll a 18 to 19, you strike your opponent. They roll a fever roll as if gravely wounded. And then 20, you kill your opponent cleanly and you must flee abroad for 1 sim year. So they have to, you have to move them out of the house. You can't play with them. So that is what will happen for 1 full year. So here's a modifier. So if you have a fitness 6 plus, you can subtract 1 before rolling. If you had a recent bar visit, that counts as drunkenness. So if you roll a 20, you are not going to kill your opponent, but you will be killed as you were too hungover or drunk to shoot well. And then if you have a mischief of 8 or more, you sabotage your opponent's weapon and you kill them cleanly. And you roll, if you have a 8 or more, you roll a 1. So, all right, the next role is a traveling role. So there was a lot of highwaymen back then that kind of rob people. So I kind of wanted to put that risk in here as well. So anytime you travel, if you go travel to some other person's lot, you go to a ball at a different venue, or you take a long journey, you go on a country holiday, you go to Bath, go to the pool spa, then you have to roll a d20. So if you roll a 1, you're in a serious accident, and then you have to make a fever roll as if you were gravely wounded. If you roll a 2, you were in a minor accident. You arrive in a foul temper, no lasting harm. And this could be like a cute meet cute opportunity. And then if you roll a 3 to 20, you have safe arrival. And your poor families don't do this roll because they walk everywhere. All right. Your next role is going to be the soldier's role. So any STEM who enters the military career has to roll this once per year of active service. So 1 to 3, you're killed in action. 4 to 5, you're gravely wounded. And then you could reduce their fitness. You could also do the fever roll here if you'd like. You don't have to though. 6 through 18, It's uneventful, you're fine. And then 1920 is you get extinguished conduct. So this is a time maybe the king or queen gives you a title maybe or something like that. And that helps your dynasty score as well. All right, and the final role is the elder role, because the elder life stage, not a lot of people live super long in that stage. So, if they roll a 1 or 2, they pass in their sleep, or a 3 to 20, they're fine and they survive. So you wanna roll this each rotation, with every elder in your household after the first rotation because I do have some elder sims in the starting household. So all right. And then funerals. So definitely make sure you guys, if you have the life and death pack, make sure you make your wills. Um really kind of and have funerals that come with that. That was a big part of that time period as well. So we want to play that out. Keeping scores. So I do have a spreadsheet tracker with this that kind of calculates things for you. So I'll show you that. But you're going to tally different things through each generation. So we have our dynasty points. So these are like made up points. This is not something that comes with the royalty and legacy pack. So these are the different achievements that you can get for your dynasty. So if your heir reaches level 10 in a dynasty skill, that's 5 points. If your heir reaches level 5 in a dynasty skill, that's plus 2 points. The heir completes their assigned aspiration plus 10. The heir marries within or above their class plus 10. The heir marries successfully into another playable household plus 8. The heir embodies all 3 dynasty ideals. And then that's plus 15. So that would be if they have like all 3 as listed traits or they role play them consistently. If they're constantly doing those things, that would be plus 15. Each legitimate child surviving to young adulthood, that's plus 3. If your generation produces at least 1 heir, that's plus 5. The romance trope assigned to this generation is meaningfully fulfilled, plus 10. The heir achieves level 10 career or business. So like that would be mainly for the merchants. It wouldn't really be for the landed gentry. That would be plus 8. Um, the household rises 1 social class. That's plus 25. So if you have a smooth handoff to the next generation and that's completed without bankruptcy, scandal, a lot of scandal or extinction, that's plus 20. Um, a child in your household enters a publicly admired pursuit would be like the military distinction, the charitable foundation, and published author, something like that would be plus 10. When they end a generation on the same lot they began, they didn't have to sell it. That's plus 5. All right, and then we have our scandal tally next. So this is the Whistledown ledger. So your scandals are great for your Whistledown game, but not great for your dynasty. So they will cause you to lose some dynasty points, but gain Whistledown fame. So think like the Bridgerton family. Like they had a lot of scandals, but they were very respectable. That's basically kind of what this is. So if an affair becomes public knowledge, if an affair becomes public knowledge, that's minus 10 dynasty loss, but plus 15 Whistledown. If an illegitimate child is born, that's a negative 15 dynasty, but plus 20 Whistledown. If you have a broken engagement, that's a negative 8 dynasty, but plus 10 Whistledown. If a duel is fought, regardless of what happens in that duel, that's negative 10, but plus 12 Whistledown. If a duel results in death, that's negative 20, but plus 25 Whistledown. If you have like a fight at a society event, that's a negative 5 dynasty, but plus 8 Whistledown. If your gambling debts become publicly known, that's -10 dynasty plus 15 Whistledown. If there's an elopement, that's -15 dynasty plus 25 Whistledown. If you marry well below your station without some kind of redemption storyline, then that's -10 dynasty plus 8 Whistledown. If someone is imprisoned or formally arrested, that's -25 dynasty plus 30 Whistledown. Bankruptcy is -20 dynasty plus 15 Whistledown. The heir refuses the role. They run away, whatever. I don't know what they did back then. Join a circus. -10. Dynasty plus 10 Whistledown. If your family member publicly snubs like a higher ranked sim, like a landed gentry, sim like publicly like stops talking to the duke or something, that's -8. Dynasty plus 12 Whistledown. If your family is denied entry at the Gentlemen's Club, All Max was what it was actually called, then that would be like a narrative, and that would be like a story-based thing. But that would be -5 Dynasty plus 5 Whistledown. If your Sims get divorced and that's found out, that's -25 Dynasty plus 40 Whistledown. All right, so for scandal, so an unresolved scandal is one that is acknowledged in your game, but it isn't really like discussed in your gameplay. Then that would be unresolved. But it becomes resolved when one of these things happens. They perform a great redemption act. The scandalous sim is exiled from the family, so they're cut off financially. They're forced to move out. They're forced to work on their own, take care of themselves. Then that would be resolved. The sim dies and they have a funeral, or there is a brilliant marriage that overshadows that scandal. So great redemption acts will restore half the dynasty points lost because of scandal. And then Whistledown gain will be a lot. So things like having a great charitable donation of 50,000 or more will restore half of your dynasty points. A brilliant marriage. So if they marry one class above their own, or they marry an heir of another household, then that would count. The distinguished military service, so that 19 soldiers role, that would be something that can restore it. So if they reach level 10 in writing or painting and publish a masterpiece, then that would be a great redemption act. So if they construct a public good like a chapel, a almshouse, a school, so that would be $50,000, and you would have to create that community lot or place it down from the gallery. You would have to do that to do that redemption act. All right, so I do have a tracker that sums up all the points, but this is what it looks like. So if you have 500 plus points, you're a house most illustrious. You're spoken in the same breath as the royal cousins. If you have 350 to 499, you're a house of standing, welcomed in every drawing room of high consequence. And then 200 to 349, you are a respectable house, decent, modest. And then 100 through 199, a house hanging by a thread. The neighbors are constantly talking about your house. You're you're not respected at all. And then under 100 is a house in ruin. So that would be for a dynasty. And then for Whistledown, infamy points 200 plus, you are the talk of the ton. Your lady Whistledown is constantly like talking about you. Your household 100 to 199, you are frequently mentioned. You are a reliable source of scandal that all the mamas are warning their daughters about. 50 through 99, you are occasionally whispered of, which is kind of basically kind of where you want to be. You kind of want to be here. And then 20 to 49, mercifully forgotten. Um, so you're not really talked about in under 20. You're too respectable. You you're just boring. All right. So and we have the Grand Bridgerton Award. So if your household concludes the legacy with 350 dynasty points and 100 Whistledown points, you are a true Regency triumph. You are like one of the greatest houses. You are beloved and notorious at the same time. You are our Bridgertons. That is what you are. So that's kind of what that is. So that's also something to shoot for. All right. So next I have my household guides. So I have each of the houses, their social class, their starting historical romance trope, their starting funds, the estate size, and then a little backstory about them as well. Okay, so our first household is the Ashworth family. So I have given everybody like last names. You guys can change that in the tracker. It is, I think I have everything set up by their last name. So you might want to at least keep that. If you do want to change their first names, that's fine. For your starting generation. Okay, but they are our Duke household. And then their historical romance trope will be the Rake's Redemption. So that's going to be super fun. Their estate size is 500 acres. So I would use the Regency Romance mod for the estate size. If you don't have that mod, then you kind of have to do something else with that, or you don't have to have that, but you could kind of make up your own story about their estates. And then their starting household funds are 750,000 simoleons. And here is the backstory on the Ashworth household. So, the Ashworths are one of the oldest and wealthiest houses in the ton. Their fortune is vast, secure, and entirely free of debt. No family in the realm commands richer coffers, broader lands, or finer houses, and not a single creditor ever had cause to call at their door. Wealth, in short, has never been an Ashworth worry. Reputation is. The late Duke's untimely death from a riding accident has left his eldest son, the most notorious rake, to inherit the title. Sebastian's escapades have filled every scandal sheet, and his mother, the formidable Dowager Duchess, has declared that this season will see him wed and reformed, or she will personally lock him in the country until he comes to his senses. Now, with the late Duke's brother, Lord Frederick, back in town, Constance's already difficult task has become nearly impossible. Meanwhile, Beatrice longs for a love match in a marriage market that whispers about her brother behind every fan. And young Theodore worries he will be sent off to boarding school before he is ready to leave home. So, our dynasty ideals are diplomatic, passionate, and connoisseur. Our dynasty skills are charisma, romance, and dancing. And then I have this little household roster of everybody. So we have Lady Constance Ashworth, Dowager Duchess. She's an adult. So for her aspiration, I have successful lineage, or if you're using the Regency Romance mod, you can do lasting legacy. And then for traits, I have snob, ambitious, proper. And then I also am using the Fairwick mod. And then I have these traits for noble and meddling. And then and then their starting skills all here. So I'm not gonna go over everybody's starting skills and stuff, but you will see each sim, their age, their aspiration, their traits, and their starting skills. So this household, we have two adults. And then we have two young adults and then a teen. So that is what that first household has. All right, the next household is the Pembroke family. And their social class is nobility, and they are a viscount. And then their romance trope is marriage of convenience. So their estate size is 200 acres. So I do kind of have for a rule that nobles should have like 500 acres or more. Um, but they had to sell off some of their land to pay for the debts. So their starting household fund is 35,000, which is a very low sum for a viscount. We have our creditors at the door. It's going to be hard for them to pay their bills. And then this is their backstory. Once counted among the most envied families of the realm, the Pembrokes have been brought to the edge of ruin by the late Viscount's catastrophic fondness for the gaming tables. When he died, he left behind a mountain of debt, two unmarried daughters, a younger son nursing dreams of a commission he cannot fund, a grieving widow, his own formidable mother installed in the best chair in the house, and an heir barely of age forced to deal with his father's creditors. Lord Edmund Pembroke knows what must be done. He must marry an heiress, regardless of how his heart aches for another. His mother prays nightly that he will not become his father. His sisters dream of seasons they may never afford. Their home is leaking, the tenants are restless, and the time is running out. All right. And then our dynasty ideals are scholarly, caring, diplomatic, and our dynasty skills are logic, charisma, and writing. And then these are everybody's name, ages, aspiration traits, and their starting skills. So if you don't want to cheat these skills, you could cheat with MC Command Center, or you could just cheat with in-game cheats, or you can just work your way up to get those skills before you start playing. All right. The next family is the Whitlock family, and they are our landed gentry household, and their historical romance trope is a classic enemies to lovers. And their estate size is 100. I did start off both of the landed gentries with that size estate, and then you can grow it with your gameplay. And then their household starting funds is 150,000 simoleons. So for their backstory, Sir Reginald Whitlock is enormously proud of three things: his fine herd of horses, his comfortable income, and his absolutely irrefutable opinions on every subject under the sun. His wife Eliza has spent years tactfully managing the household around the storms of his temper, and their two grown children have inherited every ounce of his combative spirit. Miss Penelope Whitlock has declared loudly and repeatedly that she will not marry, particularly not the insufferable Mr. So and so her father Myers. Nathaniel is locked in a bitter feud with a neighbor, a feud that began over a horse race when they were both teens and has not lost an inch of its venom since. Then Whitlocks argue spectacularly, love fiercely, and seem to be the only people in the county utterly unaware that their feuds always end the same way, at the altar. And then for our dynasty ideals, we have scholarly, passionate, vicious. And then for dynasty skills, I have logic, research and debate, and horseback riding. And then these are our Sims in that household. And then the Hartley family is the next family. There are our other landed gentry family, and their historical romance trope is wallflower romance. I love that one. Their state size is 100, and their starting funds are 90,000. And then here is the Hartleys' backstory. The Hartleys live among books. Their home is a rambling, slightly shabby manor whose library is the finest in three counties and whose ballroom has not been used in a decade. Mr. Augustus Hartley is a passionate amateur botanist and antique enthusiast. His wife, Brigitte, runs the household with gentle competence and the village with a hot cup of tea always ready. Their eldest daughter, Imogen, has read more books than most clergymen and has spoken to fewer than 10 gentlemen in her entire life, a fact her mother is beginning to find truly alarming. Her brother Oliver is sweet, brilliant, and so socially awkward he once accidentally proposed a wallpaper pattern. Little Charlotte, the youngest, is the only Hartley who seems to know how a party works. Augustus's hopefully impractical younger brother, Cornelius, rounds out the household. He is a naturalist who arrived to visit a few years ago and simply never left. The family is universally beloved and universally overlooked, which, as the Hartleys would say, is very nearly the same as being happy. So, their dynasty ideals are scholarly, nature loving, and caring. And then their dynasty skills are archaeology, logic, and gardening. And here is their household roster with all the Sims and info about them. Our next household is a merchant household, and it is the Blackwood family. Their historical romance trope is social climber, and their starting household funds are 65,000 simoleons. Cassius Blackwood began as a draper's clerk. His wife Vivian began as a seamstress with a remarkable eye. Together, they built Madame Blackwood's, the most talked about modiste in town. 18 months ago, Cassius died of a sudden fever, leaving Vivian a widow with a thriving shop, 2 grown children, and a family ambition that now rests entirely on her shoulders. She runs the business herself from the townhouse above it, with her daughter Arabella serving as the shop's finest model and her son Julian persuading reluctant husbands to settle their wives' bills. The Blackwoods have built something rare for their station. But without the man who began it all, Vivian and her children faced their greatest challenge, winning the acceptance that trade alone cannot buy. So for their dynasty ideals, I have hardworking, artistic, and passionate. And for their dynasty skills, I have charisma, romance, and cross stitch, which kind of mimics sewing, since we don't have that in The Sims. And then here is their household, with their names, ages, and whatnot. All right. The next merchant family is the Crowley family, and their historical romance trope is forbidden love across class lines. So their starting funds are 18,000. And then their backstory is the Crawleys have run the same small tea shop and bakery on the edge of town for 3 generations. Mr. Thomas Crawley is respected throughout half the town for his bread, his cakes, and his unfailing kindness. There is scarcely a household in the parish whose servants do not pause at his counter, and his wife Edith's tea is famous enough that the snug little parlor has become a meeting place of its own. Their daughter Rosalind serves at the tables and dreams of an entirely impossible love. Their son Henry has watched his father tirelessly toil away far too long and intends to make a fortune large enough that no one will ever look down on a Crawley again. The Crawleys are honest, clever, and quietly proud, and the world is about to make all 3 of these things very difficult. So for our ideals, we have hardworking, passionate, caring, and for our dynasty skills, we have baking, cooking, and charisma. And then this is our household roster with them. And our last family is the Finch family. So they are our only poor family. And basically, why I did a one poor family is because basically all your townies that you're going to be interacting with are poor. So we don't really need to play with 2 poor households. And 7 households is enough for a rotation. So that's why I did it that way. But the historical romance trope is the Cinderella story. So, and they will be renting this land from a gentleman, and you have one of the gentlemen be the landlord of their home, if you want to use that. And for their starting household funds, it's 1,200. All right, and their backstory is the Finches hold the tenancy of a small farm on the edge of a gentleman's estate. It consists of a few rented fields, a strip of pasture, a kitchen garden, and a cottage that has housed Finch hands for 3 generations. A few years ago, a cruel winter fever carried off Mrs. Finch in the space of a fortnight, leaving her husband Walter with 3 children, the rent still due, and a landlord who had made it quite plain that compassion will not stretch indefinitely. Walter works the land from dawn to dusk. His oldest, Daisy, is universally agreed to be one of the most beautiful girls in the village, and she tends to the animals and patches what cannot be replaced. Her brother Jasper does the work of 3 men in the fields, plowing, mowing, and mending fences, and hiring himself out to every neighbor's harvest in turn. Little Bessie tends to the hens, sings in the choir, and believes with the unshakable faith of a child that her family's luck is about to turn. The Finches have nothing, and they have everything, each other, their pride, the small green plot of land, and a stubborn, foolish, beautiful hope. So their dynasty ideals are caring, hardworking, and nature loving. And their skills are gardening, cooking, and handiness. And that is their household roster. All right, guys, now I'm going to show you the tracker. All right, guys, so this is our Google Sheet tracker. So I have several tabs to track everything on. So the first tab is how to use. And it tells you basically what each tab is and how to use it. So our first tab is the Dynasty Ledger. And it is used to log everything that happens. You just pick your household, the heir, and you pick it from the drop down. So let me show you guys that. All right. So you have your household here. So you pick it from one of the households that you have. So we'll just say Ashworth. And then over here, you write the generation. We'll say generation one. And then you put the name in. It doesn't matter. I'll just put Julie, which is not anybody's name, but I'll just put that here for now. And then you would put what their achievement is. So let's say Julie reached level 10 in Dynasty skill. That would be it. Let's say she reached it in 2 skills. So we'd change quantity over here from 1 to 2. You could put that here. And then that'll total it here. And any notes that you had would go over here. So I'm going to add in just every household we have here, just so you can kind of see how it totals everything for you. All right. So we have everybody's skills added up here, and then it'll add it up for you. So if we go back to the how to use tab, the next thing is the Whistledown ledger. So I'm going to click over here to that tab, but that is used to track the scandals and if they're resolved or not. Here. So you click over here and you basically do the same thing. You pick your household, you write your generation, what sim it was, and then you click here to pick whatever scandal it is. So let's say the Ashworths got bankrupt. And it tells you here it's negative Dynasty 20, but 15 Whistledown. And then let's say they resolved it, you could put resolve. They didn't become bankrupt anymore. And then if it is a great redemption, you would just mark that here. But you would basically do that for each household. And I'm just doing this again so I can show you guys how it calculates everything. Okay, if we go back to how to use, so our scorecard totals everything. So I'm gonna go over here to show you that. So as you saw me, I populated stuff here and here already. So we have points already added in here. So right now the Ashworths have negative 10 Dynasty, but 15 Whistledown. The Pembrokes have negative 10, but 20 Whistledown. So that is basically why everybody's rank is what it is, with the point system that is in here. And if you ever need to refer to like basically what anything is, you can go here to this reference tab, and it tells you what everything is, like our dynasty rank, why everything is so low, right? Because we're under 100 for dynasty. And then Whistledown, anything here, anything 0 to 19 is tedious, or 20 or more is mercifully forgotten. So since our points are so low right now, that's basically why it is that way. So yeah, so this should be really, really easy to do, to keep track of your points as you're playing. So you would just pick you would just pick your households as you're playing and kind of track everything as you're playing. It's very easy to use. All right, I went over the scorecard that totals up everything, super easy. For death rolls, I have that here. So you would do it here. So let's say Ashworths rolled, say the Ashworths and the Pembrokes got in a duel. So I do have a link here that would go to a d20, and then you would just type in what it was. I don't remember what anything is, so I just put 2 and 3, and then write what the outcome is. So let's say they both are nobility, so we want to go over here. I have what all the roles are. So for duel, we would go over here. So we're gravely injured. We're gravely wounded. So this household was gravely wounded. So you would just write that here. And then if we go back down here and scroll over, so you're grazed and your shot misses. So you can mark that here. It's grazed, but okay. All right. So that's how you would do the death rolls and kind of keep track of them here. It's very easy to use. I have a link to a d20 die. And then I have like the child bed roll, the fever roll, the dual roll, the traveling roll, the soldier's roll, and the elder's roll all right here. So it should be really easy to keep track of those death rolls. All right. If we go back here, so class and net worth. So this is used to keep track of everybody's like funds, how much money they have. So if we go here, um, I have populated everybody's household, and then you would just populate everybody's starting lot value. I didn't do that this time because I don't know what the value is of your house that you're gonna be playing with. Okay. And then so I put in some lot values here just so you can kind of see where everybody's at. So like their nobility, their landed gentry, their wealth bracket here, because I made it a little lower, I think, is merchant class. And then there's is merchant and poor. So I think their house might actually cost more. I don't remember. So they might be landed gentry if it's cost more there. So you can kind of keep track of everybody's wealth bracket, and then each generation you need to check what everybody's wealth bracket is. So you can put all that here and keep track of it. Super easy to use. All right, the next tab is taxes. So this I have everything. I have the tax rate here as well. And then what happens with unpaid taxes over here, if you need to reference that, is right there. Okay. So I have some starting families populated here. I'll make sure to clear all this. Okay. So I copied the lot value of everybody's houses, and then let's say they have 100 windows, 75, 50, 50, let's say 25, 20. And then we don't do the lot tax on the finches. So this right here calculates their what they owe the king, and then this is what they owe from that window tax, and then this is all the taxes they owe. So let's say they pay 50,000, they pay the full amount. So then they don't have a debt here, and then this will change to settled. Let's say they pay 10,000, that's all they could afford to pay. So they partially paid it, but this is how much they owe, and then this is what the balance would be in the next generation. And then we'll just say everybody else paid everything, so you can see as I'm putting it in that it updates to settled. So this is like an easier tax system than what I normally have. All right, but yeah. So this is what they would owe. So the only difference is I have the finches classified as merchant when they're not, they're poor. So let me change them to poor. And then you'll see their annual assessment changes to what it actually is, which is $200. But let's say you had a lot of money and they wanted to pay their taxes for the rest of their life and they paid 3,000 simoleons, then they have this balance too. So you can actually like overpay too if you want and have a balance. I don't know why anybody would overpay, but let's say you want to do that, you can. All right, so let's say this family did not pay any taxes. We'll change that to 0, and you'll see they're unpaid and in collections, and so they need to pay this amount the next round. Population. So I basically included like a general population tab where you can kind of keep track of things you want to keep track of here. If you want to keep track of days played, what their sexual orientation is, their childhood traits, their childhood teen aspirations, their aspirations if they completed it, any hobbies, their favorite colors, their careers, and any other notes you have here, you can keep that here. So that's basically what that is. Um, and then reference. So this is all the reference information. So don't delete it. I put don't delete here. So make sure you don't delete it, please. If you do want to change anything, if you want to add more stuff here, you can do that here. And then this will always be a read-only document for you guys to download. So if you want to fiddle around with it and change things around, if you want to add more dynasty stuff here, you can do that. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys this is here as well. If you want to change anything, you can do that here, but don't delete it because then your drop downs and stuff won't work. And then down here, I just have the Dynasty rank, Whistledown rank, and the Grand Bridgerton Award, how to get that here as well. I didn't add that on these tabs. So that's just a quick breakdown of how to use it. I feel like it should be really easy to keep track of everything. All right, so that is gonna wrap up today's video. I've been recording for a while, going over everything. I'm super excited to play this. I am planning to kind of show you guys how I have everything set up. But then after that, I will probably do more glimpses into each of these households. I'm not gonna do like a full playthrough on my channel like I do with my BACC challenge. So I just wanted to tell you guys that, but I will kind of show you how I have everything set up as I go in and set everything up, and you can kind of see how I start the households off on. But yeah, if you guys have any questions about this challenge, comment below. If you have any suggestions, if you see things that need to be changed, let me know. I've kind of set this up and did a little play testing, but I haven't played this fully. So this challenge may change and evolve as I play through it more. But I wanted to show you guys what I've been working on. I'm super excited to play it, and I hope you guys are too. So yeah, so if you like this video, if you love this challenge, can't wait to try it. Like this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that hype button if you want to see more people get it out there. I feel like this challenge is very different. It is a historical challenge, right? So it's inspired by older Sims historical challenge, but I feel like I made it very different than what I've seen out there. So I hope you guys enjoy playing it. I can't wait to play it. So all right, guys. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time. Bye.